Welcome to another small disc golf video. This is part 4 in a series about designing a new disc. In this episode, it's all about 3D printing. This is the disc that I designed, and from there I took it into the slicer and I made a version and sliced it, got the G-code, and I printed it. And here it is being printed, and I'm using this beautiful tricolor filament. It's really amazing. And I got this disc and I threw it around, and the first throw hit something and it didn't break, and the second throw was amazingly overstable, and the third throw I lost it. So I printed another one, and when that one finished I found that there were some issues, overhang and otherwise, but they didn't really affect how it flew. Here's some echoing of an interior surface. I wanted to try printing the disc without the organic supports, without any supports at all, just using the print base. I made the assumption that it would need the organic supports, but I don't really know that. So I did print it without the organic supports, just with the print base as you see here. And if you look at the part of the legend circled in aqua, the perimeter and the external perimeter, which are the disc, is 81.3% of the used plastic. And the rest is all just little bits, and the biggest piece of that is the skirt and brim. The solid infill, overhang, perimeter, those are all part of the disc as well. So there's very little waste on this one. It also takes less time to print, which is nice. Even in stealth mode, it's less than 2 hours, but 1 hour and 41 minutes is really good for a disc of this size, which, by the way, is just under 76 millimeters. It's about 75 millimeters, and it weighed in at about 7.5 grams. I'm printing a new version, this time in blue Overture PLA, which is my basic PLA that is incredibly reliable. I wanted to eliminate any chance that the print was being affected by my choice of filament. And this little blob sticking off the bottom notwithstanding, it's actually printing incredibly well. It behaves like my other discs that do not need support. There's a little bit of roughness right around the critical area. This little blob probably came off of my print nozzle. Here it is a little further into the print, and it's going really well. If you look around the inside bottom edge, especially the right edge, you'll see layer lines, but it looks really smooth. Curve is really nice. More than good enough for an indoor golf disc. You can see the print base down there and the brim around it, and it's got perfect adhesion. You would actually see a white bubble underneath it if it was beginning to break loose. Doesn't matter if there are defects in the print base. Here's the back side of the disc, backlit with light, which normally is a bad photo, but here it lets us see the very wispy stringing that does sometimes happen on discs. If it's just a little bit, I don't worry about it. This is more than I usually like, but also you can see that the profile is a little bit rough on the lower left side. That's the hard part of printing discs this way, and that part looks better when you use supports down there. But if you can get away without it, then it's great. This is fine. You do not need to have a perfectly smooth edge in order to have a really well-flying disc. The print has about 15 minutes left before it is finished, and this is at a very critical spot where that seam around the inside, the inner lift that has friction on the top, it has to make a bridge across the top. It can't just make curves the whole way. Eventually it has to switch to a bridge, and here it has done that. And it looks pretty good, and I think that bodes well for the rest of the print. There is some ringing I've noticed whenever the print changes direction, so on both sides of this inner ring. It's because the disc is flexing on the print base. This is the lower left corner of the disc that I printed without any supports, and you can see how rough that edge is. It's really torn up. The layer lines next to it are good, but the edge is bad. And as we go up, you'll see other defects in this disc. That layer shift there, I think I caused when I bumped it when I was taking a photo. That's my fault. You can see some ringing around the edge where it made the 90-degree turn around the top. This is the bottom edge. This is that nasty part. You can see coming across here that it's disorderly, not consistent overlaps. That makes for a very rough edge. In fact, this disc flies. We're zooming way in to see these defects. Here it is going back the other direction, and you can feel these, and they don't look nice, but this disc flies great. So it's important to have realistic expectations for what your 3D printer can actually do. So this is without supports. This is with supports, and with supports, it's a different filament. It's another PLA with glitter in it. With supports, it comes out gorgeous. I mean, these layer lines are parallel, the curve is very smooth, takes zero afterwork, and it's not that hard to get the organic supports off. The big downside with any kind of supports is the waste. This is the top edge, again with organic supports. This was supported while it was printed, and so the very top edge is perfect. Again, perfect layer lines, perfect curve. It's a beautiful print if you use the supports. It's a trade-off. You don't really need them to make a flyable disc, so I think you could save plastic if you're just making them to fly. This is my first attempt to print without a print base using organic supports, and it did not work. Here's the bottom of that print, and you can sort of see why it didn't work. The thin disc is the brim, and the brim is always attached to whatever is contacting the print bed, and in this case it was a very tiny, small part of the disc. It wasn't enough. The brim reinforces whatever is on the print bed that it's next to, but there wasn't enough there to make a difference. That's why the print base matters, is that it's a big thing, and the brim really stabilizes the big thing, and the big thing connects to the disc, is physically connected to the disc, so that the disc can't really topple. The brim just makes the print base better. In this slowed down video, you can see the benefit of printing the disc vertically. The disc is so well secured to the print base that these motions back and forth, left and right, are actually happening incredibly fast, but the disc is not wobbling. It's super rigid. And PLA is very rigid, the print base is very well secured. It just can't move. Even though the top of those supports are not even touching the disc yet, all of the support comes from the print base. It's still incredibly rigid. This Amelin marble PLA is really amazing. It looks really good. You can almost not see the layer lines. You can see that at the very tops of the discs there's a little bit of dripping. This is actually the bottom where I sanded away the print base, and it looks really good. It's very smooth. This is the top, and it also looks really good. Every time the cooling fan goes past the organic support, it goes whoosh. I like to make an animated GIF that shows the disk moving up and down, sort of like this, but a little more carefully. And I do that in Fusion 360. I have a mouse from a company called 3D Connection. I'll put a link in the description. And I use it for Fusion 360, but believe it or not, it also works very well in the PrusaSlicer. And you'd be surprised in which applications it works, and it's very convenient for this kind of thing. To make the animated GIF, I took a screenshot from Fusion 360 as a movie, and then that was a .mov file, and I converted it to an MP4 file. And then I uploaded it to a site called Cloudconvert, which converts an MP4 into a GIF file. It has a 5 GB limit, so I used a 540p recording to make sure that it wasn't too large. This is Cloudconvert, which will make an animated GIF out of an MP4. You select a file, and it uploads it when you click Convert, and then it produces a .gif file that you can download. You have a lot of choices when printing. Your choices affect not only how it flies, but also how it looks and how strong it will be. You can print it without supports or print it with supports. Thanks for watching this smalldiscgolf.org video.